Hello, Ugly Ducklings. We are here with Robyn Cruze. She has agreed to let us interview her today, and we're really excited to interview her. So, hi, Robyn. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to read a little bit of a bio about you so everybody knows kind of who you are, and then we're going to do Swans Revealed so that everybody can find out a little bit more about you. So Robyn is Australian-born and struggled with an eating disorder for over a decade. Now fully recovered for over 10 years, Robyn is a speaker, coach, and co-author of Making Peace with Your Plate, Eating Disorder Recovery. Robyn has a master's degree in solo performance and writing from the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and worked as a professional TV and film actor within Australia. She is a volunteer for NIDA, Proud to Be Me, and ANAD. You're a contributor for ANAD, right?
That's right, just contributors.
Okay, awesome. So welcome to Ugly Ducklings. I know we just talked a little bit about it. We're really glad that you are here.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time, and now we're going to move on to the Swans Revealed questions. Just listen to the question and tell us as quick as you can what your answer is. And the first one is, what was your best moment of 2013?
Oh, having a book published.
Awesome.
Good answer.
And what's your favorite word or your favorite phrase?
I am enough.
Mm-hmm. Great.
That's awesome.
And very, very good for some of our ugly ducklings. What was the greatest fear that you had as a child?
Losing my mother. The death of my mother.
Oh, okay. And what's your biggest, this one is very good. What is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, when people spell your name wrong after telling them 3 times how to spell it.
Cruze with an E. Is that what you're talking about?
Holy crap, yeah, really, seriously, I do not know. I've had people spell it 3 different ways. Yeah. And I don't say anything because I don't want to sound like, like I'm just being really hoity-toity, but it's kind of rude. If you see that my name is spelled a certain way over and over and again when you see it on my signature, take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about something you're proud you've overcame, Robyn?
My eating disorder.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a favorite quote or a line from media or from pop culture or maybe a movie or a book?
I think, and I don't think I'm going to say it very well, it's Gandhi's quote, be the change you want to be in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I got that correct, but you know which one I'm talking about.
I think that's right. Be the change you want to be, or be the change you want to see. I don't know. I think that's right.
It's one of those. C or B. Both you should be anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Both is fine.
And what about a random fact about yourself? Can you share that with us?
A random what?
A random fact about yourself.
Random fact. I could live on, if I had to, and if I was on a deserted island, I could live on pizza and water for the rest of my life.
What kind of pizza?
Just plain. I just like it with pepperoni, but it has to be good sauce.
Okay. Acceptable. I'll accept that answer.
Can I add pizza and salad, actually? Because sometimes it might get a little too much for every meal.
Okay.
Yes. So I guess that answers the next question. What's your favorite food?
Yeah. Pizza. Pizza and salad.
Awesome. And, okay, what about, Robyn, a future goal that you have?
My future goal would be to help women redefine the word beautiful through their authentic self.
Mm-hmm. What about the word ugly? Have you thought about that, about changing the definition of that word at some point?
I used to think that ugly was a horrible word, and I always, because I felt so ugly, that those emotions. But now I don't really feel like that ugly is such a bad thing. Like, I think it's the way that we use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, having said that, I certainly don't allow my children to use the word ugly. You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have like a poster that uses ugly as like a it's like an acrostic poem, right? Is that the right word?
I think so, like an acronym?
But
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah,
an acronym.
an acronym. So, but our whole thing is just like the ugly duckling was called ugly her whole life, but she was never ugly. She was like, spoiler alert, but she was just different, right?
Right.
So if she that was all, it was all like her perspective or his perspective of how he saw himself compared to other people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, like, the only time I use the word ugly is to describe not people's looks, just,
No.
you know, other characteristics about
I
them.
use behavior. Like, I often put ugly into the context of, like, how ugly, like I say in my book, no one tells you that eating disorders are ugly.
Yeah.
Because the emotional association to the word ugly is what makes it so powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quote, actually. I have a quote from your book about that. So that's
okay.
Okay, and this one is you can choose not to answer it. But what is your favorite fairy tale?
No, she has to answer it.
Favorite fairy tale? Well, actually, my girls and I love Tangled.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So Rapunzel.
Yeah, because of how she is so, like, adventurous, and she wants to see the world, and, you know, she's in her power.
Yeah.
When she escapes. We like that.
Yes.
I've only seen it once, but it was really good.
Oh, I've seen it a billion times because I've got girls 6, 7.5, and 8. Or Frozen. Oh my God, Frozen. Could that be a fairy tale?
Yes. I watched Frozen twice in the last 36 hours. So
I love. Okay, I take it back. Frozen is my favorite.
Excellent choice.
I nanny a little boy who has to watch it like every day, and then my sister and I needed to watch it together for obvious reasons. So I've seen it so many times.
My girls were here, they would sing the entire show to you.
I would probably join them.
It's an amazing movie, yeah. It's a hit.
Yeah, but that's my favorite.
Okay. We wanted to interview you. We kind of met you through Mental Fitness Inc. and the work that Marie and I kind of do for their recovery awareness interview series. And then I was really intrigued by another interview of yours that I watched when you were talking about owning your story. And that's a main mission of Ugly Ducklings, so that's one of the main reasons that we kind of reached out to you. And then I actually knew I wanted to interview you before I even got your book, and then I read your book, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, we have to do this. So I just wanted to read this like excerpt from your book. It's from actually the really very close to the beginning. But you just talked about that you wished you never had an eating disorder, but then you realized that that history was yours. And you say, it's a history that would never be able to change no matter what I did. I was so devastated about how my story looked and how my truth would sound to others that in itself kept me fighting for control for more years than necessary. I didn't want to own my truth. I wanted someone else's story that looked more glamorous and successful than mine. So that's really like vulnerable to write that even, but and then to, you know, have a whole book published that is your story, and you're basically giving other people permission to share their story and to own it. You mentioned in your book even that you often felt like an ugly duckling, and I know that you mentioned that in the context of beginning to model at the age of, I think you said 16?
Yeah, I was actor.
Oh, acting, okay. But you were already struggling with an eating disorder at this time, correct?
That's right, yeah, from
So
11.
From 11. So can you tell us a little bit more just about that part of your story?
About when I had it, or when I owned my story?
Just kind of, I guess, background of your story, and then like why you felt like an ugly duckling and how that kind of perpetuated what you were already struggling with.
So when I was 11, I always felt a little different, and my dad was overweight, and he really kind of used food in, I guess, looking back, in a medicating way. And they say that eating disorders are part gene, environment, and epigenetic. And I really felt, honestly, when I was 10, I remember looking in the mirror and really feeling very beautiful. I mean, it was like I really saw me before all of that pain happened. Mm-hmm. And when my mom told us that she was going to die when I was 11 years old, and she didn't die at for another 19, but when she told me that she was going to die, my whole world came undone, and I turned to something that was going to help me medicate. And I really felt like the eating disorder served that for a really, really long time. Now, what happened over that time, because they're really vulnerable years of your life, I started eating a lot. And at the time I was 16, I was quite chubby because I was using food emotionally. And I began to get teased. I would run across the school ground, and Philip, I can't tell you his last name, say Philip P, would yell out on the stairwell, "Hey, Robyn Cruze, Jenny Craig, drop out." And oh God, I felt so naked, and there was such a disconnection from that 10-year-old girl that looked in the mirror that felt so beautiful. You see, at 10 years old, I was in touch with what my beauty was. I had defined my beauty through my whole self, right?
Yeah.
And then in between me eating and our culture telling us that we have to be a certain way and we have to look a certain way, and the way my dad looked, I slowly lost that ideal of beauty. So when I was 16 years old, I struggled. There was no longer any knowledge of that kind of authentic girl looking in the mirror at me anymore. I was viewing my beauty through other people, and I just did not measure up. I didn't understand it. I didn't measure up. I hated myself for not measuring up. And the more I hated myself, the more ugly I felt, and the more I wanted to act out. So that's kind of...
Yes.
And later on, when I was in TV and film, I was in such self-loathing that only looking back now, I can look at myself and say, "Oh, gosh, you're a lovely thing." That I couldn't do that then.
Robyn, could you tell us a little bit about the eating disorder that you struggled with?
Yeah. So I say that my eating disorder had many faces. It had multiple personalities. So I started off, if we use like the diagnostic kind of phrases, I started out as a binge eater, and what that really just means is that I would have bouts of binging. Later on, when I was 17, I found laxatives, and I took bottles of it at a time, and I had nearly given myself a heart attack. And so that did not work, so I then began to restrict. And also when people started calling me, Robyn Blobbin and Jenny Craig Dropout and all those things, I immediately understood that my body was betraying me. So I went into restriction. And by 19, I was near anorexic. And I kind of vacillated between anorexia and bulimia through purging ways. Then when I got into acting, when I did a show, I remember seeing my weight fluctuate as I would look back at the shows, and so I was binging and purging my way through that, and that really was my cycle: binge, purge, starve, binge, purge, starve, binge, purge, starve, until 29 when I got recovery.
Okay. I just wanted to know because, well, you mentioned that you were chubby first, but since you were on TV, I guessed that probably you also had suffered or had struggled with an eating disorder like anorexia and all that. That's why I wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, though, because I really want to be clear here, too, because this is very interesting, and I know I mentioned it in my book, but I really want to be clear to people because when I hear that misconception of what you have to look like to follow your dreams and become an actor. And so I really want to be really clear for the people that listen to Ugly Duckling. So yes, I was at my thinnest when I got the show that I was on for a couple of years, and then I was also at my largest during that show. However, I've also gotten roles when I have been an average size. So I'm talking average here. I'm not talking wafer thin or overweight, just the normal size. So I've also gotten roles, and that's that misconception, and that's what I believed, that I had to be a certain weight in order to get these roles, and it really wasn't true. Yes. I had to look at myself a certain way in order to get the roles.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. There's another part of your book where you talk about working with your emotions rather than working against them, and you call that really changed your life. And can you tell us a little bit about what this means?
Well, I guess I mean that on a couple of levels. You know, when you put down a behavior of an eating disorder, it just allows you to deal with all the emotional pain that you try to suffocate by using an eating disorder. And I always say that my eating disorder originally was like me putting on my superhero cape and panties and trying to do whatever I could to not feel that pain. And I really succeeded for a long time until the eating disorder was just the pain. So when I got into recovery and the behavior was gone, all the emotion, the anxiety, the depression, the trauma, the panic, it resurfaced. And so I had the opportunity to really begin to work with those emotions, to really question those emotions, to breathe through them and realize that they weren't going to kill me like I thought they would. Because I was so scared of feeling, like, you know when you say, what's your biggest fear when you're a child? That kind of was my biggest fear, to feel all the pain that I felt that my being was capable of feeling. Like I thought my feelings were going to kill me. That if I really kind of sat with them, I would self-combust, you know?
Wow, yes.
And so I got to sit with them, and they don't kill you. Who knew? They don't. And also, you know, I realized that my feelings aren't always fact, and I try to, and I'm not always successful, especially when it's around my husband. I try not to react immediately because I come from a place of fear. And so when I'm reacting, it's usually a place of anger or attack. So I have to sit with it and examine what's going on and not make it about me, like to attack myself. So I got to sit with it. I got to question it, what's really going on. And is what I think really going on really the facts? Yeah. Did that person really say something to me and they meant to be mean, or did I just feel reactive because that's how I perceive the story to be? Yeah. But I have to give myself time to really sit with that and then breathe, and then I can go up and then I can react to it.
Yeah. My friend Heather, who we just interviewed yesterday for Ugly Ducklings, told me this, and I never really thought of it, but she's like, there's the situation, and then there's everything that your mind attaches to the situation. So there's what happened is this like one tiny little thing, and then everything else is just what you've attached to it. And then Marie has told me that too, like the 90-10 principle. Like,
I love that.
It's so
I love
good.
that.
So.
You know, it was funny. A couple of days ago, I was eating some dinner and I was really hungry, and and there was this amazing salad that I just love, and it's got like sunflower seeds and everything, and I love that kind of stuff. So I started eating it, and I took seconds before like dinner had come around because I was so hungry, and my husband Tim says, leave some of it for the rest of us. And immediately I was like, what? What are you saying? In my head, I was like back when I was 16 years old, and this guy was yelling down at me, calling me, a Jenny Craig dropout. And I had to really like sit with that. And I was like, oh, I gotta go over here for a second. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, ever since I heard of the 90-10 principle, I started applying it somehow, because I used to get so stressed about everything that I just started, let's say, applying it to my life. I don't know how to say that in English, but yeah.
That's right.
Sorry.
Good.
So in your book, you mentioned your friend Jessica, which it was like a really short part, but I found it really endearing. So you said she was a unique, creative woman with a passion to nurture others. Her quirky sense of humor and forthrightness made you feel safe and comfortable, and that you liked that you knew where you stood with her. And you said that in a way that kind of sparked the beginning kind of the hard work you were going to embark on for your recovery. So I think it resonated with me just because you were talking about feeling safe, and there's definitely certain people that everybody has certain people that they feel safe with more so than others. But I wanted to ask how important relationships are in recovery and kind of what that looked like for you.
So I'm really glad that you've asked that question. In the book we talk about gathering the truths. And Espra Andrus, my co-author, really speaks about this a lot, because we talk about setting ourselves up for support in our recovery. And that can often mean to people that we go and we tell our story to people, to everybody. But here's the thing. For me, when I was in my eating disorder, I picked relationships with especially men that abused me the way that I abused myself. And when we're in recovery, or we want to start recovery, we really need to identify those people that are non-judgmental, that really have our back. Because the last thing you want to do is go and be vulnerable with somebody who then uses that story to make their point when they're upset with you. Or they come to you and they tell the secret of other people. There's ways that you can really evaluate who the special support group is going to be. And that's usually, are they judgmental? Do they support you when you tell your vulnerabilities? Do they encourage you? Or are they on the other spectrum? Do they use it against you? Do they say that it's your fault? Do they tell you to try harder? You've got to really sort those people out so that you're really setting yourself up for success. And I think we know who they are,
Yes. Yeah, because I think that has happened to everyone. And there's people that will always be, I don't know, probably they envy you, or they want something that you have that they don't have. And they show it that way, they attack you and you feel that there's something you. I guess it happens to everyone. That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's just identifying those people,
Mm-hmm.
How did you kind of identify those people beforehand, or like how hard was it for you to kind of cold turkey share your story with people when you started doing that?
So I didn't.
Okay.
I paused, and I knew the importance and the sacredness of my recovery. And when I went to tell somebody, I asked myself, like Brene Brown says, people have to earn the right to have you trust them. And so, like the girl in my book, she had earned the right for me to share my story with her. And so before I share my story, I ask. Not because I feel sorry for you and I feel it's the right thing to do and I should disclose myself because maybe you've disclosed yourself, and, you know, I have to ask myself, is my story safe for this person? And I've got to look after it. It's all I have.
And so did that make sharing it easier, or was it still hard the first time you shared your story? I know.
I think...
Off the top of my head, it's not planned. It's just based on...
No, I actually feel like telling my story was a little bit more of a relief, because it was something horrible in my head. And while it was still horrible and painful and tragic, it was better out, you know? It was better out than in my head. Yeah. And the more I share my story with the people that I trust, the more support that I got, and the more encouragement I got, and the less I was in the secret. And so my recovery was inspired.
Okay. That's, I guess that's what we're trying to do also with our website. It's like giving people a chance to tell their story, but we know the effect that it can have on people and the effect that it can have on them. And we have seen it because lots of people have shared their stories and they have received feedback from other people that have seen how that has helped them. So I guess that encourages them to keep telling their story, to maybe heal them, like for them to heal, and also to because they know that it helps others. Because for sure other people have been in that situation. So I completely agree.
Here's my thing about this. This is what I'm really passionate about. When you like own your story, like you own all the ugliness and the pain and the nitty-gritty, the dirt of your story, and you sit with that and you don't hide anything from yourself anymore, not even necessarily other people, but when you do not hide anything from yourself anymore, oh my God, girls, that is like the foundation for making your recovery and your life worth it. When we can own our story, that's where we find our purpose and our passions, and that's where we stop running. We don't have to run with ourselves anymore because the secret's out of the bag. And so now all we have to do is find out who we are, what makes us tick, what's our passion, our powers, our purpose. And that is something amazing. So own your story, tell your story.
Robyn, what about tolerating pain by using skills? This is also part of something that you mentioned in your book, and we're interested in knowing what it means.
So it's kind of when we go back to there's a couple of things. So the first thing that comes to mind is the breathing and questioning the facts. That's a very big tool, and waiting to respond to something until you're settled and you really have a clear understanding where you are and how you want to react. The other things are when we have anxiety or we're feeling overwhelmed with pain, what do we do? And, you know, Esper would be more of an appropriate person to ask about that because she's clinical, but one of the things that we talk about is just being able to breathe, just again breathing. And I always think that the main tool is, look, when I was in my eating disorder, my brain felt like it was shake with emotion, you know, and I couldn't get clear. And when you would just allow yourself to breathe in that moment, breathe it in, I always say to myself, I'm okay. I'm okay when my feet hit the ground. I'm okay when my feet hit the ground. And breathe. And breathe. Because it's that emotion, that emotional roller coaster that has us wanting to turn the switch off. Mm-hmm. And so they're just some of the things that I do. I still do them.
Awesome.
Okay, so there's a page in your book, page 114 and 125, in case anybody watching is going to go look it up. So you kind of, like, you switch on that page and you start, instead of talking about how you felt like an ugly duckling, or like that you felt ugly, you started talking about that you had an ugly secret. So I just noticed the, like, vocabulary shift, that you were no longer, like, referring to yourself as ugly, but you were referring to your eating disorder as ugly, your secret. But you talked a lot about vulnerability, which is, I think that resonates for everybody. Like, I've heard people use the term purposeful vulnerability, and I'm like, are you on crack? Like, who's purposely going to be vulnerable? Like, it is such an uncomfortable thing. But then you basically said, you said vulnerability was the thing that you would you hid from at every cost. But then as soon as you kind of started sharing your story, that kind of went away. So I was just wondering if you could talk more about that. I know that, like, I even say vulnerability hangovers, like, you get vulnerability hangovers from being too vulnerable. But, like, writing down your story in the way that you have and talking about it is, you're always vulnerable kind of now.
Well, that's kind of true, but here's the thing. I always looked at vulnerability as being this incredibly weak thing. Like, I was a weak person if I allowed myself to be vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. So of course I hid it at any cost. At any cost. But vulnerable isn't weak. Being vulnerable is strong. I can be vulnerable without feeling like I'm going to be taken for granted or feeling like people are going to make fun of me. Vulnerability is me owning my truth. That's powerful. I'm owning my truth to you right now, and I am not being I'm not weak. My vulnerability is my strength. My vulnerability allows me to have you come into my life. And because of that, we get to have an authentic connection. That's strength. Vulnerability is strength. It is not weakness, and nothing to be ashamed of. It's beautiful.
Wow. I think it's the first time that I hear this, and it's very interesting. Robyn, there's a part of in your book that talks about facing the fact that someone didn't like you. Maybe, I guess, I don't know if you meant something related to rejection or related to the fact that maybe not everyone that you meet will like you, or...
Yeah, I spoke about someone not liking me, and that was an extended part of my family, and that kind of shocked me because I didn't know that they didn't like me, and they genuinely at that time did not like me. And I remember feeling like it was going to kill me because I've spent so much of my life trying to make people like me, which also included trying to be somebody that I wasn't, to the point where I'd even forget who I was. I'd lose my identity. But when I really kind of sat with that, and that first initial shock kind of subsided, that was kind of a relief, because it was like removing the smoke and mirrors. It gave me permission to just be me, and for that person to just be that person. And I just remember consciously thinking, I don't have to be liked by everybody. It's okay. Like, there are so many different people in this world that I'm not going to be everybody's piece of cake, you know? Not everyone's going to think that I'm pleasant. Not everybody is going to want to, you know, see me in a room and walk up to me and think that I'm like heaven. They're just not. I'm gonna piss some people off. And that's okay. Because now I know who I am. And that's okay. because I'm not trying to be everybody to anyone.
Yeah.
You get to be yourself, I get to be myself, and that's okay.
There's even like part of that that's like, I know I just started kind of my first real job less than a year ago because I finished school, and I'm just, thank you. Unfortunately, my job is not like in anything that I did school for, but I've like experienced, it's been a huge learning curve as far as that goes, because it's not even you necessarily. Sometimes it's the other person, and they don't like anybody, and they're not going to like anybody. So I know at my work, sometimes I'm just like, I am so nice to everybody. I treat everybody equally. We don't even work together. Like, it's not like we have to spend copious amounts of time together for them to not like me. They just don't like me. And I've really had to accept that sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. People just aren't going to like you. And it's true, and it's not about you. And sometimes it is.
And it goes back to that 90-10 kind of concept. It's like, it's not just you who walks around like that. People have different perceptions, and they project certain things onto you, and you have no control over that. But I like how you say, like, we just have control over ourselves. We can just act the way we want to be treated and move on.
We wanted to ask you about alcoholism. It's Alcohol Awareness Month this month, and we're hoping to post this kind of as part of a weekly blog series just about that. So I know that you actually, I think this is kind of how we connected when you posted something about replacing an eating disorder with alcohol, like basically taking one vice for another. So could you tell us a little bit about that and tell us what, like, just briefly what recovery kind of looked like then?
Yeah. So the statistics kind of change a little. They're kind of everywhere at the moment, but one of the most consistent statistics will say that 50% of all those who suffer from an eating disorder will also suffer from substance abuse. And I call that switching the witch for the bitch. Put one down,
I loved that.
Pick up the other. And so I had, funnily enough, when I first got eating disorder recovery, I knew that if I wanted any kind of substantial recovery from eating disorder, that I would have to put down the alcohol. And I knew that because I had researched that for a long time. And when I mean research it, I would try to get recovery from my eating disorder, and then I would switch addictions and I'd start drinking, and then that would inevitably lead me back to the eating disorder. So I knew that I would have to get that, to put down the drinking first, right? So I did that, and then I started this long-term recovery. Well, about 5.5 years into that recovery, my mum passed, and it was 1 month prior to my first child being born. And that was incredibly traumatic for me. And while I did some therapy around it, I was a new mum without a mum. And I really didn't process it in the way that I should have processed it. So when I moved states, I relapsed. I found myself picking up a beer in the middle of the day, and I relapsed. And I was on the ground in fetal position, and I could not get up off the floor after a bout of drinking. One of my friends came over from Australia, and we drank and drank and drank. And my husband's an interventionist, by the way, so that was a very odd thing for him. So I'm on the ground in fetal position, and my little girl at the time, Lily, she was 3, and Chloe was 18, she came in and she said to Daddy, I think Mummy needs a Band-Aid. And so my husband, Tim, called some friends, and then literally the next day I was in treatment for alcoholism. And that's a tough one. It's a tough one. For me, I don't drink. I am in recovery from alcoholism, and drinking, and this is not for everybody, but for me, I was one of those 50%ers, and drinking would take me back to the eating disorder, and I didn't want that, and I never want that. And my recovery is so sacred to me that that's a part of it.
Wow.
Is that a question?
Oh my God. Yes, I would like to, it's very inspiring to hear you, because even though the story seems so dark and like traumatic as you said, you're still here and you're talking to us and you're recovered both from your eating disorder and from alcoholism. And since mainly our target audience are teenagers and people who are going to school and people who have suffered from bullying, people who feel different, ugly, that they don't have any worth, that no one likes them and everything, and that they are probably going through something that you already went through. You have probably answered these questions a million times, but what would you say to these people? Because you are someone who went through that and who really experienced it. It's someone who can talk from experience and not any person who tells them, oh yes, do this and do that. No, you have, let's say, authority, I don't know, or you have like your word might influence them or be powerful for them. So what would you like to say to all these people that might be listening to this soon?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Maria? It sounds so tragic and hopeless at the time, and it sincerely was. It was the most painful, terrifying time of my life, and sometimes I did not believe that I would get through it. But here's the thing, whether you believe it or not, there is always a solution. This story is not a tragedy. This is an inspiration. Don't feel sorry for me. I am a strong, proud, very empowered woman, and I know that we can get through things. And I know that you, out there who is ever struggling, I promise you that there is hope. Email me. I'll give you all the hope you need. There is support. There is a solution. There are people willing to help you no matter what. And sometimes they're not in the immediate family, and that's okay. But there is always someone. All you need to do is take the next step, the next best step, and there is a life worth living waiting for you. I promise.
That's it. There it is. Thank you so much. That's perfect. Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here and maybe reach somebody. That's why I do it.